team in general. For example, here's when we discover that there might be different process changes or something we need to do there. So feel free to jump in. I tend to, in these sessions, not want to be toggling between a training guide, but rather just kind of share our general overview of what we're going to cover, and then I'll follow up with that documentation. Rather than just looking at my screen, I would like it to be conversational too. Every group is different. So just today, we're going to focus on, thinking from an agent perspective. What do you need to do or know to handle interactions in Genesys Cloud? Drew had shared that he's been already in the system quite a bit, so there is familiarity there. And we'll just let's make sure to call out anything that is different that the team will need to know from their current system. I'll call out the ones that commonly come up. We'll talk about handling calls and chat interactions, transfers involved with those, conference calls, a warm or cold transfer, kind of the information you're going to get, basics of how it interacts with your ticketing system. And then at the end, we'll talk about the conversation ID. It's pretty easy, but it's that unique identifier for the call, which is great when you're when you have any questions or issues and you want to reference that call for someone else. In Genesys Cloud as well, sorry about that, we will, golly, I lost my train of thought. Let's just keep going here. All right, so Genesys Cloud is a web-based phone system that sits on Amazon Web Services. Your environment is in America's US West, which might be a little bit confusing, but all new orgs right now with Genesys Cloud are placed on US America's West. And that is important in case there's ever any outages in Amazon Web Services in general in that region. A couple of years ago, some of us may remember when that happened to Amazon Web Services in the east side, which actually was when Genesys switched to putting all new environments on the West. So Genesys Cloud runs on Amazon Web Services with microservices. I did attach a document to our meeting today, or the training checklist, and one of the links in there is for the status of Genesys Cloud. Agents may or may not be interested in subscribing to Genesys Cloud updates. But again, if you're ever interested in Genesys Cloud status, we always want to focus on America's US West. Being that you do technical stuff for the university, you may be more interested than other teams that I've worked with. So I'm going to go ahead and log into Genesys Cloud as I were an agent. But and feel free to jump in, anyone, but my understanding is once you're in your environment at Purdue and with SSO, you likely have a Genesys Cloud icon. And at this screen, you're going to see something that logs you in via SSO. We may want to grab screenshots of that, but I am not in your environment. So I am going to get in with a username and password and just jump in really quickly here. All right, so I am logged in with agent level permissions with one minor, or actually, I think that should look correct for you. Absolutely. So the first, we're going to go through kind of the anatomy of Genesys Cloud, the navigation panels here. So in Genesys Cloud, the person icon is your profile. When you do log into Genesys Cloud, you're automatically placed in an available status. The available status does not make you ready to take an interaction. I'm going to go ahead and click on my name. So let's pretend it actually says Megan here. And this is my profile. This is the information that anyone else in Genesys Cloud at the agent level or above will see. If you decide as a team to allow pictures in Genesys Cloud, I would recommend for the leadership on this call that we just set some guidelines again. And so here, when you're training the agents, we would review, for example, often teams will choose pictures of yourself and not your dog and, whatever those guidelines may be. For the team members, if they do put kind of some phrase or motto for yourself, you can put guidelines around that as well. You do have some profile information. I believe your team members will be set up with a work phone. Otherwise, as an agent, you do not want to make any changes to your contact information as your environment is set up to route calls accordingly, and we don't want to disrupt any of that. So when you are set up, don't adjust your contact information. Within our status, you can see that I can navigate to different statuses, and under busy, our team has a sub status of busy, which is either IOC or point. Away would be used when you're running to the restroom, fill your water bottle, that type of thing. Break would be your scheduled breaks that would occur in the workforce management system. Meal would be your, of course, meals. Meeting. If you aren't already using a meeting, as leadership on this call, you'd want to set aside or define when we would use meeting and when we would use training. You can see anytime that I click on any change my status, I can see the counter of how long I've been on any status, so that if I come back early from my break or so on, I can see where I'm at. So when you start your day, you're in available. Again, you're not yet ready for interactions, and we'll come to that in a bit. I do have a phone that was set up for me by the team that set up my account. The naming convention for that phone will have your name included in it. If you don't have a phone there, you would click on this drop down. Let me just erase my phone. It would be very apparent to you that you don't have a phone, and you would search for your name of any phones that were available and attach that to your profile. All right. So at the agent level for the leadership on the team, we do have something that is default available that I want to share with you that we can remove. So currently, I'm assuming your team is on multiple queues. Is that correct? Like some of these that are there, they might be on more than one as a norm?
Yep, that's right.
Yep. In today's world, does the team ever need to maybe focus on one queue over another? And is there ever a need to add or subtract oneself from taking calls in a certain queue?
Not necessarily. There will be some times of year where we might add an additional queue to certain members or something, but not typically on a daily basis or anything.
Okay, so what this does, and again, we can change this permission, Dan, but I, as an agent, just deactivated myself from the training queue. So if I put myself available for interactions, I would only be eligible to receive interactions from the queues that are currently in active status, unless or until I activate myself or a supervisor or manager does. For some teams, that's great because the teams, will kind of watch the cues and then can on their own address the things. For some teams, it can be disruptive because you might forget you deactivated yourself and there. So right now it is in the agent's hands to be able to adjust that. We can change that if you want. Any thoughts on that for now?
I think that's going to be a leadership level decision for activating queues, so we'll probably want to disable it for agents.
Okay, let's put that on our list. I will work with Marcos to just kind of ask that question during next meeting is what, if we know what we want there. So continuing with the profile, you At the end of your shift, you'll want to log out of Genesys Cloud. This will help with your kind of time in, time out. I'm assuming what you're using today has statistics, how much time I was logged in versus how much time I was taking calls. So you want to log out at the end of the day, obviously not for lunch or break because we have those statuses. If you happen to make yourself available for interactions and you forget to log out at the end of the day, we do have some stop gaps in place, but it will not log you out unless there is anything else in your environment that will push you out. So I anticipate, when you get started, that may be something that your supervisors may be, watching and helping you with if you forget to log out at the end of the day. There are some additional preferences that we can change at the agent level. As kind of your display, we do not want to do anything with changing the password. Your login is controlled by SSO, so changing that password will not be helpful. There is one item under sound. You can create an audio profile. There is no need to create an audio profile at Go Live. Sometimes it is used if there's any kind of troubleshooting items. With your headset, Genesys Cloud plugged into your computer or laptop will route calls to you depending on the brand of headset that you're using. Sometimes you'll find those that are recommended and supported by Genesys Cloud. Usually if you press your mute on that headset button, you will see it on your Genesys Cloud screen and vice versa. Sometimes those don't work hand in hand. So as an agent, until you know how your headset works with Genesys Cloud, just be cautious if you're muting on either the phone or the headset, the behavior there. Typically, it is, if I mute my headset, imagine I have that cord in my hand, and then I try to talk, I would need, it looks on my screen that I'm not muted, but I am actually via my headset. So just a little bit of playing around if it is a different headset to make sure you understand how it works for you. All right, there is also a function in Genesys Cloud to set an out of office message. What this would do is if someone, similar to like an Outlook, but if someone was searching for you in Genesys Cloud, it would let them know when you're back. It's definitely not something that is required as a function of Genesys Cloud, but it can be handy because we have this search bar here where you could search for someone and you can see their status and other items about them. So we can see, very good, Drew. Thanks for the example. Drew is in a meeting, and if we click on Drew's profile, for example, it appears that I am Drew, which is very confusing, but I am not Drew. So we can see some information about Drew. This is a great example. We can, follow the leadership and those on his team and navigate to see those folks as well. All right, and then to get back to my screen, to my view, I'm just going to click on my profile again and get back out of that out of office. I'm going to click on my name. Kind of gives me that clean view. You'll find within Genesys Cloud, as you're moving around, you're going to have stuff on your screen, but sometimes if you want to go back to just simple, click on your name again. All right, so if I have people that I contact a lot in Genesys Cloud, I may set them up as my favorites. So let's say Jesse is one of my favorites. I just search for Jesse. And then when I'm working very quickly, I could see, oh, yep, looks like Jesse's in. And from there, I could send a chat to Jesse. I could remove them as a favorite, look at Jesse's profile, and then kind of I can add and subtract those people as I want. There's no need to have any favorites, but sometimes if you want a quick glance, if your supervisor is in, and then maybe you have a question. So and then we can chat as needed. This is often used by teams if, hey, can I conference you in on this call? Or, hey, have you seen this issue? And we can invite other people to the chat too. So maybe it's just me, Jesse and Drew right now working, and I can expand this window and we're talking. Sorry about that. We're talking about an issue that's going on, and this is an example. This is not. Go ahead.
Real quick, just so everyone's aware, there is no expectation to use this chat feature. I would say continue to use Teams unless you find this as a better way for doing that. But we have no expectation that you will be required to use this for talking with the team.
Thanks for jumping in with that, Dan. If you later decide you don't want it, we can certainly adjust accordingly, but perfect. So that chat on this left navigation is not where you're going to handle customer chats. You're going to receive them differently. Jesse, where are you located? Oh, wait, we can see where Jesse is. There we go. There's Jesse. Okay. Right. Video chat we are not using. We may look and see if we can take that out. And then this call icon is for calls that you make that are not involved with the queue. So the user interface on Genesys Cloud, this is one area that to me is not exactly intuitive, but there's two types of calls that are received or made are on Genesys Cloud. Those that are part of an ACD interaction or a queued interaction, or you make on behalf of a queue, and those that are not associated with, say, a customer you're calling, or you would use this phone function to call to order a pizza, if that's allowed, or to call a supervisor that's not directly related to something you're working on with a customer. This call does not have involvement with a queue, so you're not getting credit for it. And if you are on one of these calls and have made yourself available for a queued interaction will still interrupt this call. So say, for example, I want to call and check and see if I won concert tickets or something. I just put in the number. This is a number that wouldn't be stored. And I hit enter and click on the green phone icon to call. When I call that number, then I am connected. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes it goes on the same microphone, so I just want to make sure you can still hear me. So in this call handling functionality is pretty intuitive. I've got the mute. I've got pause to put this call on hold. I've got a dial pad. If I want to press 1 for cheese, press 2 for pepperoni, so on. I can add additional people to the call, transfer it, hang up. Again, that is more of a personal call or a call maybe to a supervisor, but not where you would want to call a customer back because you don't get credit for it. We have our inbox, and I don't believe that we are using voicemail, so that's not on there, but you will get, as we work with workforce management, and if we're doing shift trade or time off requests through there, and then your evaluations will be received here. So we'll look at that in a moment. Agent assistance, I believe that we are not using right now, but what this is, team, is that if you, for example, you want certain people as designated as, maybe it's senior agents, maybe it's, other people that kind of, it's basically your help desk for your help desk, right? It's a chat room that is, that people can ask questions, and it is essentially staffed by people who are your question answerers. Not all of our teams use this, especially with a smaller team. It may or may not be of value, but right now it is enabled from an agent standpoint. Lastly, on this left navigation is interactions. This is where you would go to make calls on behalf of a queue if you were calling a customer back. So the phone with the call is personal. The one at the bottom is official business. In that case, it's going to prompt you to decide what queue you are making that call on behalf of. So I'm going to make a call on behalf of a training queue. The impact of that means that on the caller ID, the phone number that will show is that which we've designated for the training queue. So that if, for example, someone doesn't answer or, the phone number and the name, if we designated for what the caller ID should show. This also then accounts for official business for the training queue. From here, I can still call my supervisor. When I search in here or filter, shall I say, I see Dan is available and I could call him. I could enter more than one. I could also look for any external contacts that might be saved in our environment in Genesys Cloud. So other numbers that you may call. So let's see. The external contacts as an example, they are not working in our system, but if I wanted to call them in the caller ID, say training queue, that's what I would do to call them. When we are calling back a customer, we're always calling on behalf of a queue. That's also going to prevent another call from coming in, a queued interaction, if I am still working on that issue. Any questions on that? All right. So let's go across the top navigation. Activity is more around just your general kind of performance. There is a gamification feature that we could look at too, but your quality scorecard, if you're using gamification, it does create kind of leaderboards. Dan, we have GC3 licenses, right, on this environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the gamification is included with this license bundle, and it just is a matter of turning it on, but it does just kind of add a little bit more flavor, may or may not make sense for your team. Your activity could also be your schedule. Once that's up there, that piece is still coming. In the directory, in my organization, we have the people that are right now in this environment, and this is great. So you can break it up by, what department the people are in, their title, and kind of filter your list there. From here, you can see who's all available online, their status, and just so you know, if it's not documented, it's a rumor. Perfect. All right. We also have in my directory is these external contacts. So these are the contacts that have been listed for that your team calls regularly. If there are additional, this can be, kind of a list that increases. And just as a test, I put in a number that I use a lot for training. We can certainly delete it, but this has a long IVR. So if you're demonstrating calls, I just listed it in there. Otherwise, you can always type in a number. So if you find yourself as an agent typing a number that you use a lot, let your leadership team know, and can certainly be added. Although you will see that you yourself can add contacts, please know that that does add it for everybody. And so you kind of want to make sure that it's somewhat approved before we get a messy list and any naming conventions are followed. Right now, we don't have any shared documents, but there is a place to share documents. It could be processes, procedures. I assume you have a place for that, but if there is ever a need, there is this workspace here that is included in our license bundle. And we will come to performance workspace. That's reports that we can see on ourselves, and you can ignore admin, you won't have that. So when we are in Genesys Cloud, and I like to go back to my cleaner view, otherwise it seems confusing. When I am ready, I can put myself onto on cue. This changes my color to blue, and on cue and available are mutually exclusive. You can't be both. So notice all of a sudden we have another status that showed up there. If I do go to click available, I am no longer on cue. See that toggle turned off, but I can put myself back on. If I toggle to off cue, it will put me back in to the status I was before I went on cue. Here's a note though, that is probably different from what you've been dealing with. Let's pretend you're right now I'm on cue, but let's pretend I'm handling an interaction. And I know as soon as this phone call is done or this chat is done, it's my break time. My gut would say I'm going to put myself on available so that when I'm done with this interaction, I can go to lunch. But there's a problem here. Even though if I was still on a call, you would see it wouldn't hang up on my call. It starts this counter right away. So don't change your status until right before you're about to hang up. I'll show you what happens if you forget to do that and then you need to not take the next interaction. But to me, that behavior is a little bit goofy because the timer shouldn't necessarily click until you're done with the interaction. Let's look at what it looks like for an interaction coming in. So let's see here. Whoops, I have to edit the training checklist. Sorry, I still had a incorrect name in there. So I'll send you the updated one. But in our training checklist, I do have just some thoughts about getting ready to train this as we simulate interactions in. So if you are training other agents, you're going to want to have, it can be an admin that is able to change permissions, and then a separate account, which could be your own account, that shows the permission level of the agent. Otherwise, it can be confusing if you're a supervisor and you're training and showing supervisor permissions on your screen. So if I was a supervisor training, I might have Dan change my permissions to agent level right before the class or when I'm practicing, and then after change them back to supervisor access. I don't need to have two accounts. I can use my own account and then do that later. It's important to not use more accounts than we need because it will count as more than one unique login there. When you are generating calls in, you can use your cell phone or another office phone to make calls. If you don't want your cell phone number to show in there, you can always do *67 before making the call. If you are using, say, a Teams phone to generate the call into the queue, just make sure that won't disrupt the WebRTC phone. So do some playing with that. The easiest tends to be, your cell phone or even just one of those like Google Voice or something from maybe a tablet or something else to generate that call in. The queue that we're going to use, and you'll want to verify this before any training session in case the development and project team decides to change it. But right now we're going to use for voice, it'll come in on the training queue. So if you've been through supervisor, all of your team going through training needs to be a member of the training queue. If this is a month or two from now and we've already gone live, please make sure that your new agents are not members of any other queue, say the production queues, because if they go to make themselves available for an interaction, they would get a production call when they're just practicing. The alternative to that is supervisors or admins can deactivate them temporarily from a queue. So your participants should be only part of the training queue. Right now, we're going to demonstrate the chat queue as a production queue. We will have to move that after we go live because obviously we don't want to test in a production queue when there are actually people working in production. So this this will work for before we go live, but if we add team members after, we'll want to check in with the project team at Purdue or here at GTS, and we can update that and route it. I'm assuming we'll move it to the training queue, but there's been a lot of work on chat lately, so this is where we're at right now. We will use the website, and then there is something that we scripted. We'll write in the text box to generate that interaction to simulate a chat. In here as well, I just have some thoughts about, making sure all your users, have permissions. We are, I believe, no longer in ramp. So when you do have agents log in, that counts towards our, or we're very close to ending ramp. I can find those dates, but you don't want to have more people log in than need to be because it's unique logins within our billing period. We talked about business rules, that type of thing. Here's a list of links that that may be recommended, and you can use those as you like. So I'm an agent ready for an interaction, and in me as trainer, Megan, am going to generate a call into the queue. And although I haven't masked my cell phone number, I'll just warn you, if you call me, you just may be handled by a 6-year-old, so I wouldn't do it otherwise. All right. So I am connected to the interaction, which is interesting what just happened here. All right, I'm going to expand this window. So in this interaction, I get a pop-up of what queue I'm on, what type of interaction, so call versus a message, right? I can see I'm connected, the queue name it came in on, the phone number, and we see right away we have the ticket number that's been opened as a result of this call. To find out that ticket number, I click on the link and I'll be prompted to log in to my Team Dynamics to look at the details of that ticket. Within the ticket in Team Dynamics, I'll also have the identifying information for the call. But when I'm handling this call, I would, I don't know why it flashed up so quickly, but I should have seen answer. And when I answer the call, thank you for calling the training queue. This is Megan. How can I help you? My call handling at the top here has my dial pad. Now on an incoming call, we're not often using the dial pad unless we're transferring, right? I have my mute. So my mute may not change the button on my headset. It may, but this will work no matter what headset you're using. Mute, unmute. When you put somebody on hold, they do get hold music.
Purdue University is about the persistent pursuit of the next giant leap. Through world-changing research and education.
Okay, so they get that fun hold messaging while they're holding. To take them off of hold, you click on that pause button. In Genesys Cloud, we have 2 types of transfer. We have the blind or cold transfer, and then we have the consultative or warm transfer. So the cold or blind transfer, anytime you transfer, is much like searching for a person. You can search for a queue. You can search for people, and you'll notice it kind of divides here. So I could search for users that have I in their name, queues. I could transfer it straight to a queue or external contacts, or I could type in a number. In this case, I'm just going to transfer it to another queue. The call disappears for me. I'm disconnected. And then I have 30 seconds to enter my wrap-up code. So don't worry about relevancy of these wrap-up codes in the training queue, but let's say this directory assistance best matches what this call was about, the overall idea or what generated the call. And then I need to click done. As soon as I click done, even if it's before my after call work is done, then I'm eligible for a new interaction. And that happens to be the one, I'm going to decline it. That happens to be the one that I just had transferred over. Now you'll notice I didn't get to that interaction and I actually pressed decline, but something is goofy with the behavior right here. But what this banner here, this is what will show up if you're offered an interaction and you don't answer it on time. And I go into a not responding status, even though it appears to me that I'm on queue. Anytime you have this box here, it means you are not getting interactions. You will not get another interaction until you make yourself eligible for interactions. The leadership team will be watching for this, especially if when the system is new to us. But I'm sorry, actually, I just thought that decline behavior is correct. So if I declined it, I am not responding. So I told Genesys Cloud I was ready to take an interaction, and then I didn't. I'm kind of in a limbo status. This is also what would happen if you were on queue and you forgot to log out at the end of the day, or you were on queue and you went to go to the restroom and you forgot to put yourself in away. The good thing is it won't route you any more interactions. So it's not like your phone's going to be ringing all through the night with people trying to call and nobody's there in a bad customer experience. The customer experience is just a few seconds and they're routed to the next available agent or a closed message or whatever that is. They don't even know that somebody didn't answer the phone. It's seamless to them. When I am ready for interactions again, I just go ahead and make myself eligible for interactions. If there are any waiting, I'll get it immediately. Questions on that? All right, let's get another interaction in so we can look at the other call handling options. I'm going to answer this call. Notice I don't have a ticket number quite yet. And there's my ticket number, so it is pretty quick. And it popped my login to Team Dynamics, which I don't have a login. So we did blind transfer. Consult transfer is pretty much the same, but what it allows us to do is introduce the call or talk to whoever we're calling before we pass the phone call over. So let's say I'm going to use this. Where's my target number? Oh, it was under test. Let me do test. Where did it go? Okay. Let's just type it in. So I am going to click on this icon here. And what's happening now is my original customers put on hold and my phone is dialing out to this number. So it's actually
Through world-changing research.
So I'm actually on an IVR. Let's pretend it's a person. Hey, I've got so-and-so on the line. We were talking about this. Can I transfer them to you? If they say no, I hang up and I'm back with my caller. It takes them off of hold. And then maybe I try to transfer them again or to somebody else. 800-4400. Oh, I forgot. Got to press the people. A little bit different user experience there. Once I introduce the call, hey, can I transfer you over? I can click that arrow and they're connected and I'm off. Or I can take this person off hold and say, hey, customer, I have George on the line. George is going to take it from here. He has all the background information. I transfer. I'm presented with my wrap-up code. Those two are still going on. I enter my wrap-up code. And at most, I have 30 seconds, but I'm just going to put done. And I'm ready for my next interaction. Now, there was another thing that, like, choose your own adventure. Instead of when I'm setting up that consultative transfer, you noticed I could take the caller off and it was like a conference call. So we're connected. I take them off hold and we can continue, me, the customer, the supervisor, whoever this is, and talk and talk and talk if we need to finish this way. And it actually allows you to convert it into an official conference call. And then when you do that, then you can add even more people, like party line. There is a button here called Secure Pause. I don't know if this applies as a use to you, but there is a recording policy. So any calls that are recorded, what Secure Pause is basically designed to do is, let's imagine we're in the business of taking credit card numbers. And I would say, dear customer, yes, can you give me that Visa? It's 4321, blah, blah, blah. Great, let me repeat that back, 4321. I took off the secure pause. Then that part of the discussion involving the credit card number would not be retained in the recording. So if there is, whether it's credit card number or if there is similar sensitive data, that is possible to mute out of the recording. If I want to hang up on the interaction and the call. Right here at the top, kind of the header, is the copy paste icon. That is the unique identifier, which will look in another place to copy the call. So if someone needed to reference it later on, again, it would also be referenced in the ticket number. We do have an area for canned responses. There's no canned responses in the training queue. So if we're doing chat, there can be repeat responses stored here. I don't recommend using notes. My guess is that you are to record all notes anyways in your team dynamics. These notes do not wrap up well to do any kind of external reporting. The other option you have is to schedule a callback for this customer. So I can have this person called back at a certain time. So let's say I'm in Central here, 47. And that's fine. It should go off my computer. And I'm going to say route this call back to me if possible. So I save that. Let's say I'm going to hang up this call. I'm going to put in my wrap-up code. If you do not enter a wrap-up code within this 30 seconds allotted, it gets recorded as a timeout. No wrap-up code selected. That's not good because we're not getting the data that we need about what this call is about. So it does, the leadership team, as time goes on, they'll start to see if we're missing a lot or certain agents are missing a lot of recording those calls. It does take, sometimes there's hiccups as it's new, but right now I'm, again, waiting for another interaction. I'm ready to go. I am going to generate another call in here. I answer it. I'm connected. My ticket number's coming. So we saw a consultative transfer turn into a conference call. You can also do a conference call right off the bat. I always press enter because in some screens it's enter, but in this one it'll get you. Then I'm conferencing and I can add in additional people. So this is the caller. That was me as an agent. And I don't know why it triple dialed this or double dialed it. Okay. Test that again. So I have my wrap-up code and I'm done. Oh, check this out. Here's my scheduled callback. And I'm going to answer this, even though it's not quite there. And when I answer it, what it is actually doing is dialing that call. And now the call just came into my cell phone and now I'm connected. So you want to watch for callback in here because otherwise you're going to say, thank you for calling the training queue. And there's no one there. And then of course, then you'll see, oh, it's a callback. And then you hear a dial tone. So that'll happen too. And then it looks like this is good that it's not opening a new ticket, but it doesn't reference if we had another one. And I'm not sure if that's expected. But if we are doing callbacks, you may need to search then in your team dynamics for the person. And then we're done here. Any questions on this call handling? Folks are quiet. Surely someone wants to hear someone else's voice than mine. All right. Let's look at chat then. So to simulate a chat interaction, we are going to, as a supervisor or a tester, we're going to navigate to the, I'm sorry. Web page, and we're going to click on the chat bot here. And then for training, we are going to put this exact text in the chat bot just to simulate one in. So we're just going to put that instead of pressing any of the buttons. Send the message. Before I connect you to an agent, give me your information. And I'm going to pull this off my screen for a second. End this interaction and put in this is my previous one. And since I'm also a member of the chat queue, I can get a chat interaction and call back. Sorry, one thing I forgot to do was talk to an agent. So it is now beginning my conversation. Thank you for reaching out to the Purdue IT service desk. And where is my queued interaction? Give me a second. So in my other screen, what I am doing is verifying that I am a member of that queue that the chat is. Let me see, I should be. Someone else put that one in. Okay. All right. I don't know if someone else put that one in, but thank you if you did. So I get the chat interaction, and you'll see I may need to kind of shuffle around what makes sense for me for my screens. I'm trying to grab this. Let me drag it. All right, so I'll have to play with that, but how do I resize this? Why is it doing so big for me? This is not supposed to happen when you have a bunch of people watching your screen. And it didn't happen. Go ahead.
I'm saying there was a change, I think, done just a little while ago, so hopefully that didn't impact anything that you were doing there. But you should be able to see it. Yeah, you should be able to see it more clearly. So this is why we do UAT testing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why I was just testing an hour earlier and it wasn't doing this to me.
There you go.
Oh, okay. So what is the issue I'm having is that you should have what is popping up in this window that I can't see, and I'll have to play with it, is the history of what happened on Ivy Chat before you were connected. And it is, let me grab a screenshot of what that, let me show you what that looks like. So this is what it looks like, is that I have to figure out what's going on with my screen display, but you will see the Ivy Chat history. So the conversation that happened before they got connected with you, it's not showing in the total history. It's like this one is new so that you can reference it there. But we are handling the interaction here. So these two fields are kind of collapsed for me, and that didn't happen earlier. So I'll just have to figure out what I did wrong there. But when the interaction comes in versus a call, it will say message, your status, Ivy Chat history. It does create a ticket number, and then you're just chatting as normal. Hello. I wonder if it's if there is, so this is the general queue. If the team decides that there's a lot of things that you repeat in chat that you want in the canned responses, or basically library of responses, it would just list them out and you would click on them and it would kind of essentially just paste them in the chat. So if you already have those or something similar, that can be something you build over time as well. Etc. And then the person on the other end of the chat will get your messages pretty easy. You can transfer it to another chat queue or person, but we shouldn't be transferring directly to a person, so I'm not sure why they're showing up. If we transfer to another queue, I get my wrap-up code. I can click done. And I happen to be a member of that queue, so I can pick that up. New. Let's see if I can fix my screen. Why is this? I'm sure somebody is in this meeting wondering, why doesn't she just do this? That's sorry about that. You'll notice that even though I am on the interaction here, I can navigate to my wrap-up code. The same with voice and chat. I can select the wrap-up code I want, but it doesn't let me click done or save it until my interaction is complete. Of course, there's pros and cons to that, right? Sometimes you know what your wrap-up code is and you'd like to just get it in right away. Other times, the general topic of the call may change midway through the call. And if it's a 20-minute call, then you're not accurate. But either way, we can't change that behavior. So you can pre-select it, but you can't click done on it until the interaction ends. Questions on handling chat interactions? All right, so we're on an interaction. And maybe you forgot how to do something. You may have noticed in the lower left-hand corner, I have my help functionality. And in here, it is somewhat dynamic. So because I was on the profile page, it's giving me stuff specific to the profile page. But if I forgot how to transfer, I could search for transfer in here. And it is not showing my results. So I'm going to go. Is it not giving me that? Let's go to the Resource Center. And the Resource Center, it takes me externally. That help page is quite helpful and dynamic. But if I did forget how to transfer, this is one of the links that I have in the sheet that everyone should have saved on their browser or somewhere, is the Resource Center for Genesys Cloud. This is the source of truth. When you search for something as simple as transfer, you can filter further. So for example, if I want it only from a contact center agent perspective, that will filter my list accordingly. Genesys Cloud Resource Center is very accurate. It's very rare that I see a mistake or something that's not updated. I've been working in Genesys Cloud since 2006, late 2016, and it's probably one of the best technical writing, staying up to date that I've worked with. With the exception is sometimes it's missing that use case. Why would you do this? Something like that. Within Genesys Cloud, the format here, the Resource Center, this is more of an admin. It will tell you what permissions you need to do this. And then from us as an agent standpoint, it does give you the step-by-step of how to transfer, how to consultative transfer, and so on. As an agent, just know that it used to be Wednesdays, but it's changing, but at least once a week, there are updates in Genesys Cloud. You can see those in release notes, and it's not as an agent that you would need to read these or stay on top of them, although you can if you want, but there's constant changes. So sometimes it just means the user interface just looks a little bit different than it did before. And that's fine. It's not the type of updates that, break things in general, but it does. For that reason, whether you're training or an agent using it, the Resource Center is where you want to go. Unless you need to, I wouldn't be copying and pasting procedures because they could be, with the rapid change in advancement and feature set with Genesys Cloud, they could be out of date screenshots, especially within a week. We struggle with that too. You will think you know something in Genesys Cloud, and then you start to question yourself. Go to the Resource Center to validate you remember it correctly, because it could have changed too. So the Resource Center is something that I would recommend. I know the team may or may not be using the desktop application. The desktop application can be used in lieu of the browser. If you are using the desktop application from time to time, that will need to be updated. But it does, it is an alternative to the browser. All right, so we covered interactions. The next place I want to go back to is the performance workspace. So all users in Genesys Cloud usually use some sort of performance workspace. Allow me to clean up my work here. When you first come into Genesys Workplace, we are going to ignore this contact center routing performance because that won't be at the agent level, but we're going to focus on my performance, and go from there. I'm going to start with my interactions. So as an agent in Genesys Cloud, you have a record of all interactions that you've done. It defaults to today's date. This would be great if you needed to go back to an interaction. You couldn't remember what it was about. You needed to reference it because there was a technical problem. You wanted to send a copy. You wanted your supervisor to review it. You will have access to the interactions that you were an agent for. So only mine, the supervisors would have interaction or access to interactions of everyone on their team. So for example, if I go into this interaction, I am not authorized for this recording. Okay. I should be able to play back my recording. There'll be a play thing here. And then we just have some kind of metadata about the call. Here's that interaction ID, that when I was in the interaction, I could copy and paste. So I can copy that and I can paste it with outside of the system. And then I'll show you back on the interaction screen just to filter by that as well. The timing of the interaction, the people involved. This timeline is helpful. So this one's a little bit crazy because we were transferring this and that, but in a more simplistic view is how long were they interacting with the interaction, or excuse me, with the IVR? When was the agent alerted? If I transferred and so on. So this will be cleaner, but it's nice to give you a step-by-step. And if we use transcript, it would be there. When I'm going to go back to the tab because my reports kind of hang out here until I delete them, but I can close this tab, close other tabs, that type of thing. So I'm just going to close this one, go back to my interactions, and I can go into another interaction. When I'm looking at my interactions, you saw that I clicked on here to change the date. I can also add additional fields from the library by clicking on this plus sign here. So maybe if I'm looking at the interaction, I want to look at all the calls that included a consultative transfer. So I'm going to put that field in there. What else might I be interested in? My I don't know. Kind of has all the stuff I want. Let's put the Annie in there. And it's not showing. Okay, so I can add those fields and I can also filter. So maybe I was looking at all interactions this month. I can change just by media type. So you do not want to use chat. You're going to use message. Chat is going to be, what's the word? Depreciated from Genesys Cloud. So your chats actually come in as messages, inbound or outbound, the time, other characteristics that you can filter by. If you do have an interaction ID, you say you saved it somewhere else, you can paste it in the field that says conversation ID, which is great that they use the same naming. If I put that in there and filter my list by that conversation ID, where's my, apply that. Why is it not? There we go. It entered, then it brings me just that interaction. So when you provide that interaction ID to a supervisor or someone else that has access to all interactions, it takes them right to that interaction. And in the real world, they should be able to play that recording as well. Any questions on interactions there? Okay, I'm going to click on my plus sign to get back to that menu. And let's look at my queues activity. So my queues activity is like my personal wall board. So any queue that I'm a member of, I can see how many interactions are waiting, how many are interacting right now, so live. So there is one. The service level, how many agents are on queue, how many are off the queue. Well, If I see that they're off queue, I can see, oh, on this queue, I have 8 that are available, 2 that are away, 1 is in a meeting, and maybe I need to look more into that. If I'm a supervisor, I can see how many people are communicating, idle, or not responding. The supervisor can drill into more detail and see who those people are, but at least I know maybe I'm getting call after call and that's not the norm. And I just want to see how many calls waiting until we empty that queue. Now, if my leadership decides to allow me to activate or inactivate queues, or maybe just supervisors, then we can focus on emptying out one queue or another. But otherwise, this is just your view into what's going on. Click plus again, and I'm back to my menu here. So we did my interactions, my queues activity. I can also look at my performance. I can't look at other people's performance, but let's just do, I'm going to do this month. So I can see cumulatively this month, I've only taken 4 calls. Well, how do I handle 5? What that is I may have been a member of another call, but it wasn't initially came into me. So maybe someone conferenced me in, transferred to me. So I handled 5 calls, but I answered from the queue 4. My average handle time, talk time, hold time, ACW, your average ACW shouldn't be more than 30 seconds since it's time boxed anyway. How many calls I put on hold, how many I transferred, and I have the ability to change the fields that I'm looking at. I would be interested to see, for example, do they have not responding? I can't remember. Don't have that not responding. I can filter by that, but say for example, my blind transfer percentage, I could look at that too. I can filter by certain fields and to change the stats that I'm looking at, download that, refresh, that type of thing. Notice that each day is also put out separately. And then notice I also have what are like tabs as above. So I can see how much time in August I spent in each status. So time logged in, on queue, idle. Idle would be like available but not on queue. How much time I spent not responding. So that's the time I missed a call, or maybe I forgot to change my status right before I during my ACW time to go off of queue, and it was my break time. And so I let a call roll. I went into not responding status, and then I went to break. That could happen too. The not responding status at first, it could be, you're going to have more than once you get in the rhythm, but something to very much watch for. How much I was off queue, so on, break, away. And then by day. When we get quality evaluations, you'll be able to see your quality score and your interactions are there. Your schedule when you're on workforce management, and your scorecard, which requires that gamification. So if we decide to do gamification, it's basically like your leaderboard there. And development, I don't believe that we're using, but that is more if they attach learning and assign it within Genesys Cloud. All right, what questions do you have?
Looks like we have a question in chat. Is there a limit to one ticket to one interaction in Genesys? Just thinking of multiple calls that result in multiple tickets.
Great question. Give me a second here. And we will look at what our settings are.
I think I can answer this one. So, yes, it's one ticket per call. So if the call ends up resulting in the need for multiple tickets, you would just go into TDX and generate those new tickets to send, if they have to go to other directions.
Let's look at the utilization. Give me a second here. So within Genesys Cloud, we are going to be looking at in this voice and message. Remember, it's not as chat. So when you have a maximum of one voice call at a time, and nothing can interrupt that voice call. For message, we have up to 4 messages at once. And Dan, this is something we might need to look at, and I'm glad that someone asked this question, because I normally see that a message, we usually put that it can be interrupted by a voice call or callback. And maybe the capacity, because what could happen in this, the current setting, is that we could have, as long as we have at least one message, and we can have up to 4, they would not get interrupted by a voice call, which I don't think is what you want, right?
No, that's by design.
Oh, that is.
Our
Okay,
intention
so
is we would
separate?
we would have dedicated staff assigned to work chat at certain times. In the future, we may change that around, but for just beginning, we don't want to try and have someone balancing several different things.
Yeah, and so this is the global setting. It can also be done further by agents. So if you want to pilot that later with, say, one agent, you can, in their profile, change their settings when you're ready to kind of move or test. All right, and sorry I missed that question, and thank you to whoever jumped in and let me know that we have a question. Oops, sorry, I'm just gonna jump into the meeting and just see if I missed any others. Let's see. Okay, that was the only one. Is there a way to sort the directory tab by online status and default? Oh, good question. I don't know offhand. I'm assuming you were kind of playing with it. It doesn't look like there is, which is kind of inconvenient. What I kind of a workaround, and it doesn't solve that problem, Nolan, is either if there's a list of people that you're commonly looking for, you put them in favorites. Of course, it's just a reduced directory like this. And depending how you work, especially as you grow more people, it might be troublesome. Right now, I suppose we could scroll through the other alternative if you started to just look for people. So if I wanted to look for, okay, Jesse's available, and then I check Dan, depending on what works for you. But I am not aware of any quicker way to do that. From a supervisory standpoint, there is a way that they can kind of filter a bit with their team. Is there a use case, Nolan, where you're doing that often? Maybe there's something else that we could think of that might make that more speedy. Or if anyone else wants to jump into.
I think he's probably referring to in our current environment, all agents can see all the other agents and their status, and you can basically just tell it to sort by who's ready, who's not. And we use that kind of in our mechanism for for a couple of reasons, but one is for knowing someone's availability before we were to transfer a call or something like that. But also because we have dedicated statuses for individuals that may be doing specific type of work. And so they would look at that to see what their, what role they're in for that day. Nolan, you can tell me if I'm wrong in that assessment.
So I'm navigating to the Genesys community, which is basically like the forum of Genesys users. And they have the exact question as Nolan, and let's see if anyone else has any other ideas. Report agent status. No, but that's a supervisor standpoint. Just scrolling, sorry about this. Okay. So it looks like that doesn't exist. And then what this person that is suggesting is, aside from the Genesys community, there is an ideas lab, which you can vote for ideas and kind of that if anyone does want to add an idea, I can help promote voting on our side to help you out. Each Genesys user can log in and they have a limited amount of votes too. So those are links that I also have in the resource center. Along with what Dan mentioned, also to see when a good time to take break and lunch. And okay, so for the break and lunch, again, Dan or anyone else jump in. We will be doing workforce management, and we'll have to come back to that training. Workforce management will tell you based on historical call volumes, when the best time to take your break or lunch. It'll create a schedule for you, and as close as possible, you'll take your breaks and your lunches to when it suggests, so you don't have to worry about when to take them. Over time, that kind of learns from when it has us take our lunches and breaks and gets better and takes care of that. Now, that's independent of if there's ever a situation or a use case when your leadership team would say, even though you have your scheduled time in this extreme circumstance, please go into my queues activity and make sure this queue is clean. Say, there was a huge outage or something, but in general, we're going to be following those workforce management schedules. Anything else on that, Dan or team? Not knowing your specific use cases, I just want to make sure I don't overspeak. Are you required to follow the breaks and lunches? Yes. The reason you want to follow those breaks and lunches, the leadership team, when they set it up in workforce management, they will set their schedules and preferences, like how far lunches and breaks should be from each other. It's doing that based on staffing, kind of predictive staffing to what we expect for call volumes, so that we're giving the best customer experience, balancing us all out. What that does mean is sometimes it does impact of, who's going to be on lunch or break the same time we are. It's possible that you get stuck on a call and you can't start your break time until 10 minutes after. There are certain thresholds or allotments where you're going to be out of an adherence from your schedule just naturally. Those get fine-tuned as we go along, and as the project team is working on getting this workforce management, I believe we start that next week. They will, based on how long your calls usually are, they can kind of set that up, if that makes sense. But we will kind of go over that too. And I expect to see like consistent deviations from the schedule across the team, and then the leadership kind of managing that can adjust it so we're not, nobody likes that feeling of like, I just can't do what it wants me to do. But did I answer your question, Rays, on that?
One thing I'll add to that, Raise, is that required is not necessarily how we would phrase it. These are like suggested times. I know a lot of our staff work odd schedules, and so it's kind of, when we have availability. So in some of the design for this workforce management piece that we're still putting together, it kind of gives you time blocks. It says you'll take your lunch between like a 3-hour block. So it gives you flexibility, but while also still trying to keep it within certain blocks of time so that we can maintain our coverage. But it's not like a harsh, like at 10 a.m. you have to take your 15-minute break. It's nothing like that.
Thanks, Dan, for adding that. I apologize if I went the wrong way in there. It's definitely to design a better customer experience and balance us out. But it is a machine, and sometimes things are going to happen, I imagine, and with the items that you're dealing with where you've got to deviate from it. But it does result in kind of a better employee experience too, in that you're not getting slammed at certain times. It's kind of balancing us out. And it's a fun tool to use, and Genesys does invest a lot in it. And I don't know yet if you're using all the items like time off or shift trade, but there's fun stuff coming there. Any other, are we going to use gamification? Just curious. I'm going to leave that to your leadership team, but because there's no extra cost to it. But if you want to read about it, and then maybe make a case for it, just kidding. You can just look at what it is just by searching for gamification in Genesys Cloud. I think it's fun. Sometimes people don't enjoy it as others, but might as well just have fun with it and what the options are. Again, it's no extra cost for the organization, but by default, it's not turned on.
I think the answer to that is we would like to. But in this first phase of launch, we just want to get the tool in place and get you guys familiar with it. And as we kind of continue, what we'll ask for from the team especially is what kind of improvements do you want to see? We'll maintain a register of, say, like, hey, we want to have gamification turned on. Well, then we will figure that out. We'll design the process, we'll turn it on and get everyone involved in how that would work.
Perfect. I think you could assign Drew to do all the research ahead of time for the settings that the team would like. What's fun about that too is, so I have a long background in call center operations, and I think I was a call center agent at 15, right before I turned 16. So I get it, but that was old school days. But, sometimes that means contests or prizes. Sometimes it just means, competition, but it is fun. But while we were talking, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I got a red dot in my inbox. Let's see what that is. I got an evaluation on one of my calls. Let's review that. Okay, so it brings up the interaction. I'm going to kind of collapse this a little bit. And we're putting our training goggles on, and we are playing the call from this details view. I'm sure you all see the play button right here where my mouse is. But we're playing the call, and I can see I've got 2 scores here. I scored 66% overall. Then I have a critical score of 100%. What that means is this is actually not the final evaluation for your team, but a critical score would be the questions that are mission critical, necessary, process on every call. We could have a separate score for those. But here I'm listening to the call, and I'm seeing how a quality evaluator scored my call. Again, this is just a generic one, but I can see what the score is here, and the team may or may not. I can see if this makes sense, if I agree with it, if there's any issue. But this is how I would receive a quality evaluation. And then those end up stacking up, if I go back to my overall view, in my evaluations. And in my evaluations, I think it's 90 days, I'm able to listen to the call with the scorecard, but it shouldn't take that. They'll stack up. If I'm not sure, I think Dan, the team was still kind of finalizing to see if they needed any adjustments to the form, but that's just an idea of what it will look like. A score can be redone if there is a problem. The team will decide if they, at an agent level, we can dispute a score if they want us to go a different route if we don't agree. But that's how your quality evaluations will come in when the team starts using it. And I see Noah typing, and Thomas, you're welcome to jump in by voice too if you don't want to type. Up to you. Can we correlate evals with TDX surveys? Can we correlate evals with TDX surveys? So I'm assuming survey is your help desk kind of survey after you complete a ticket that's sent out to the customer calling. As far as
so
go ahead.
Noah, on that, I would say technically yes. It might be something we have to maybe create like a Tableau dashboard or something for. But yeah, calls are linked to tickets. The tickets are linked to the surveys, so you would be able to make that jump. It just might take some work with ITSMO to figure that out. And Raise, yeah, supervisors would be completing the evaluations. We may have trainers complete evaluations for new staff coming in. And you know, anyone that might be in some sort of mentor role as they're training could be doing evaluations.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So since that showed up in the inbox, is that going to have it where after every single call, the caller will get to fill out the survey and we automatically get that in our inbox? Or is it every so often of a caller, such as if it's 1 out of 10 callers that get that to fill out?
That's a great question. So right now, the current survey system that you're using, I think the one that Noah was referring to, is not at all connected to Genesys Cloud. So this evaluation, think of it as just someone's listening to your call, maybe a manager, supervisor, or like Dan mentioned, like a mentor agent or a senior agent, kind of just listening to the call, not from the customer's perspective. And those, as far as how many a month or who's doing them, I don't think that's yet been decided. Or when we start, I don't think that's been determined. I think the team is still working on that. The current surveys that are done to the customers calling you, I'm not aware of any changes there. So right now they're not at all connected and two separate items. And then, so kind of what Dan was saying there is if and when, you know, it looks into some kind of connecting later, it may be an option. And then Dan, I'm going to, I'm assuming that those are connected to your team dynamics, right? Those voice or the surveys from the customers that have open tickets?
Yes. Yep.
And it may be not something you use. Voice surveys are not yet there in Genesys Cloud, but they are on the roadmap. And I thought they were supposed to be here by Q2, but they're not. So if I catch that, I'll just let you know in case it's relevant. But yeah, right now they're still separate. But it is a good question of, you know, what does the supervisor think of that call? And then what does my customer who actually called me and I worked the ticket think of my call, right? or chat. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So now if you were delivering this training to your team, or if you want to coordinate, I'm going to leave it to someone on your side. It's kind of hard to do remotely if you want to practice. But if I were running this training and we were going to practice right now, what I might do is have you all logged in, and I would generate the call in, and I might say, you know, Sophia, can you answer the call and then transfer to Drew or something like that. Or, you know, maybe, you know, 3 of us kind of practice, you know, from 2 to 3, that type of thing. You can, I have to update that training checklist and provide you with the documentation of this, but you can generate those interactions in the training queue if needed. You also are able to call each other within the system. So if I wanted to, oh, I said Sophia, Brianna, sorry. I could look for a contact and call them, and I could practice transferring to that as well. I don't know what works best. This group is kind of big to have us all practicing. How many have most of you been involved in testing, or anyone not?
I think only a couple of people on here have been involved in testing.
Okay. Just trying to think how to best practice this. Let's just try something here. Okay. So nobody's in the queue. It's hard to kind of demonstrate, but does anyone, let's see who's in our, let me make sure we're all in the training queue. Also a note as an agent on our first couple days, until you kind of work out if your computer is ringing or just your headset, I mean, you can change those settings. Have your headset on when you first go live so that you can hear the alert on your computer. Some people, you know, don't use you can have with your audio settings your computer ring, but then that might be disturbing to others. So if agents I don't know how far apart your calls are, but if you don't have your headset on, it could be that you go into that not responding status, especially after the first couple of days. That not responding status should be pretty rare. But it can happen, you know, the first hour or couple hours until you kind of get used to it. All right. Does anyone want to try to take a call? Let's see, did I? No takers. All right.
I can do it. This is Jesse. I can do it.
Okay, Jesse. And you won't be able to see Jesse's screen here. I'm just adding you as a member to the queue. Jesse, give me a second.
Okay.
All right, so Jesse, if you go into on queue, and I am going to just kind of give you a supervisor view here a second. What or actually we could go, yeah, I'm just going to go into supervisor view just so we have more insight here. And we are going to just do the cues activity, which just is a little bit more as a supervisor, and that we can drill in and see Jesse.
Okay.
So, all right. So we are looking at the training cue.
There we go.
And you'll see the call waiting come up. Jesse, it looks like you're not yet on cue. So if you can hit the toggle to on cue in the upper right-hand corner, and it may not have updated on my side. Let me just refresh.
There we go. Okay.
You found it? Okay.
Yep.
Let me try. Okay, so we can see that Jesse is on cue, and then we'll see the call come in the waiting here. And then as soon as Jesse answers, we'll see that he's interacting. Why does it keep going to? Hold on. I'm just going to make sure Jesse is a member of the queue. He's in training queue. Try again. Dan, I know that you've been in testing, but it keeps the number that's routed to the training queue keeps routing to a voicemail for you. Me as the caller. Oh, what is
which number are you dialing for the training queue?
765-494-3808.
3808. Okay, that's my phone number.
Is it?
You're not going to get to Genesys by calling that number. It's not routed to it.
But that's what I've been calling this whole time to generate call. 495. Let me try that again. That's what is it? Yes, sorry, it was one digit off. How did that happen? Sorry about that. Okay, here's the call coming in. What happened to Jesse now?
Oh, weird. It's being weird. There we go. Okay.
Here we go.
Hello.
Hey, Jesse. Okay, I'm going to mute my cell phone so you're not getting double. But we can see that Jesse is on the interaction. And then he has the ability to, if you want to, Jesse, you can test one of the transfer, consultative transfer, whatever works there for you.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So I can do a transfer. Okay. And then is there any certain person you want me to transfer to, or just anybody?
We could try, Brianna looks like is online.
Oh, yeah.
Are you blind transferring or consultative transfer?
There we go. Okay.
All right. So we saw the interaction disappear.
And then we click call transfer. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And I believe I must be connected with Brianna. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hang up. All right. So Brianna and I did get connected, and then as a supervisor, I should be able to see all interactions. And it might be just taking a moment. And then Jesse and Brianna, if you go to performance, workspace drop down and go to my interactions, that should show up in my interactions as well. That interaction because you were a part of it. This is the one.
Yep, I'm seeing it.
Okay. So this is kind of hard when we're not in the same room because we're not seeing each other's screen. But this is a web message. I think what we might need to do then is if we need to practice, I don't know who on the Purdue side would want to kind of make sure it's not when we're testing, because it is going for chat, it is going through the ITSD desktop services queue right now. For voice, it's independent of that. So voice, we just can add anyone. If you want me to, I can add everyone that was in this training to the training queue. And you can kind of practice blindly, or we can have someone kind of coordinate and decide. You can certainly generate calls into yourself if you
I mean, honestly, since we're not in production yet, I'm perfectly fine with everybody just going crazy and calling numbers. I'll put the specific numbers in the chat here for calling, but in terms of queues and that type of stuff, yeah, you can try lots of different scenarios. See if you can come up with anything specific that you might come across that perhaps we haven't thought about in terms of our testing. And I'll get those numbers put in the chat here in just a few.
Okay, perfect. All right. Anything else? Any thoughts on process? We had some good questions around the surveys. Okay. All right. So I will follow up with the documentation and the recording of today. And oh, sorry, Adrian, you had a question?